This is Become a Competent Biblical Counselor, and I'm Dr. Dave Jones. And this is the last episode of this series on what you would do, and it's entitled Taken Advantage Of. So how are you going to handle this? Again, we're closing out with 2 Timothy 4:2, where we are instructed and commanded to be instant, in season, and out of season. So let's see what we're dealing with now. Susan lives in another state and called me for advice on the relationship experiences with her family and the stresses realized. A 68-year-old grandmother who has been cast into being financially responsible for her 20-year-old granddaughter, who has shown a total disregard for the sacrifices of her grandmother, has made for her. Truth is, this young woman has been cast out by both parents and has been left to fend for herself. To be more specific, Susan has paid for the medical expenses of her granddaughter, wedding, relocation expenses to another state, usual and customary daily expenses, medical costs for an out-of-wedlock pregnancy, and housing and medical expenses for the newborn child. The fact remains that Susan is not only stressed about the financial burden placed upon her, but the fact that the natural parents are absent in their responsibilities, and her granddaughter responds to these gestures as entitlement issues and is non-appreciative. So, there you go. What a struggle that Susan is having with this. Take your time, kick it around, and we'll get into this when you're ready to resume. I began by talking with Susan and encouraging her to gain control of what she perceives as lost endearments, and I began to draw parallels with how Christ expected us to act and respond towards the poor and downtrodden. Instead of beginning to harbor resentment toward her granddaughter, she was taught on how to be honoring God with His example of love and compassion. It was no longer alms for her granddaughter, but in response to sharing what God has provided to be shared with someone in need. Susan was encouraged to begin a discussion with her granddaughter about becoming more responsible in her responsibilities. Susan prayerfully devised a plan for her granddaughter to follow, which created an opportunity for responsible behavior. Susan felt relief in doing this because she now became more sensitive to what God expected of her instead of what her granddaughter demanded. Unfortunately, the granddaughter did not agree with this approach and broke off all communication with her grandmother. Nevertheless, Susan was at peace because she believed she responded to how God wanted her to respond. And like the parable of the prodigal son, she will not only continue to follow God's daily comfort for her life, but will be receptive to the return of her granddaughter, should that ever occur. So that is the end of the series with various counseling opportunities that I've faced over the years. I didn't want to stretch this out to where they're long and confusing, of which they can be. These just give you some examples of how I handle certain situations. That doesn't mean you have to do the same thing. You have a totally different personality than I do. You have a totally different way of responding to the leading of the Holy Spirit, who is the most important person in your counseling situation, and you have to always be sensitive to that. Things will come to you that won't come to anybody else, that the Holy Spirit will say, well, I brought this person to you for a reason. Listen to me. Be patient and listen to me, and I will guide you through what I want you to say and what I want you to do. That's important. But I am excited about being able to share all of this with you. I hope some of it makes sense. It gives you some opportunity to see just how differently counseling can be. You may have said something that is totally different from the way that I handled it. Fine. But like I just said, the Holy Spirit might speak to me to do something totally different than what He's spoken to you to use. Thanks for listening. Make it a great day. Bye.